So we are still in Iceland with Dr. D. So as you can see around us, we've got lots of mountains, we've got volcanoes. But what can you actually tell us about all the rocks that are around us?
Sure. Well, as you know, there are three broad categories of rock: igneous, metamorphic and sedimentary. Igneous rocks are formed directly from molten lava, which cools and form rocks. And that's what we've got loads of here. So basalt, classic, basic, igneous rock. It's quite low in silica, high in magnesium, high in iron, really heavy. But what we also have in Iceland is a lot of sedimentary rocks. So all the natural processes that we can see here, the glaciers up on the mountains, the river down here, it's all eroding this igneous rock that's being produced and eroding it down into sediments. That sediment's transported by water, by fluid flows, by the glaciers. Sediment is eroded and moved downstream. And you get a wide variety of sediment sizes, and over time this will build up and collect and create sedimentary rocks. So out on the coastal plains of Iceland, we've got new material being created, new Iceland, if you will, from all the ash and sediment that's being eroded here in the centre of the country and flowing downstream, being transported downstream to the margins of the country.
So obviously we've got a lot of snow behind us, so is there quite a lot of freeze-thaw weathering as well?
Yeah, good point. So as well as the glaciers eroding their beds and creating glacial till, in a periglacial environment like this, so that means plenty of freeze-thaw cycles, you have erosion as water fills up cracks in the rock, freezes, expands, creates tension, breaks parts off, contracts, and over many cycles of that, over years and seasons and decades and centuries, you do create a lot of fractured rock material, and that can then be weathered further by chemical weathering, by fluid flows, by more freeze-thaw weathering.
So does weathering happen here faster than it does in the UK? Because obviously we've got a bit more of an extreme environment.
Yeah, good question. And yes, it does. Iceland is much wetter than the UK, so we have more fluid flows. Of course, the UK doesn't have glaciers like that. I suppose the converse to that is basalt is very resistant to erosion. So in the UK we might see sedimentary rocks like sandstone. That's less common here in the core of Iceland. Sandstone can erode very quickly, as can limestone. Basalt's more resistant.
So we were talking the other day about the fact that obviously we were testing water samples and we kind of thought that there wasn't any limestone around here. So is it purely just igneous rock that's in Iceland?
So yeah, there's no limestone in Iceland. Limestone is formed from calcareous sort of seashells and so on. So where you find limestone, that's areas that have been submerged under oceans in the past. Iceland's new continental crust, so really it's limited to igneous rocks, erupted products of volcanoes, and sedimentary rocks from all this erosion that's happening. What you don't have in Iceland is metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic rocks form when igneous or sedimentary rocks are created, exist at the surface, and are then reintroduced back down to depth via sort of earthquakes or subduction, faulting, etc., and subjected again to high pressures and high temperatures that modify them. And because we're at a constructive plate margin here, we just don't get that kind of process. So yeah, no metamorphic rocks here in Iceland.
What about fossils? Obviously fossils are mainly in sedimentary. Does that mean there's no fossils here at all?
No, the temperature of the lava when it's erupted means that you simply wouldn't get vegetation and animals, flora, fauna existing on the lava as it cooled. There may be some fossils in the sedimentary rocks at the coastal plains, but the relative young age of Iceland's only about 24 million years old. Well, it began forming 24 million years ago. The youngest rocks are 16 million years old. Sorry, the youngest rocks that we can see. In the UK, you're going back a billion years, so it's much more time for fossils to form. So not common in Iceland.
In terms of the river, because we were talking about the other day about the fact obviously the glaciers are melting, the water's got to go somewhere, so it kind of picks its own way out as it comes down. There isn't a direct channel. So if we look over here, we've got quite a few different forks of the river. So how does that form? What impact does that have on the environment around it?
Well, the reason it forms is that you can see that there's not much vegetation here. But there is a lot of loose sediment, all this eroded material, and when there's nothing really to control the flow of the river channel, it will braid and diverge and converge, and you get this braided river system. And that's very common from outflows of glaciers. In terms of impacts on the environment, it's quite unpredictable, especially with areas with even less vegetation than this. So you have a broad channel with a channel that will bifurcate. Makes it harder to build bridges. You need to build broad bridges, and it makes farming the land a bit more unpredictable.
So what's going to happen to the glacier we were on the other day? Obviously that's melting quite fast. So does that mean that maybe in a few years this will be completely flooded?
As the glacier melts, floodwater will increase. Seasonally, we're in May at the moment, but come sort of July, peak melt season, this channel, there'll be more water here as the glaciers melt faster. In terms of flooding, glacial floods really happen when you combine a volcanic eruption with a glacier, and then you get catastrophic glacial outburst floods, they're called. Glacial outburst and floods in Iceland are called Jökulhlaups, a bit of a tongue twister, and they can have huge volumes of water. Grímsvötn is a famous one. It erupts every 5 or 6 years, and the peak discharge of that might be 200,000 cubic meters per second, with something in the order of the rate of flow of the Amazon River. And that can cause huge destructive episodes of erosion, wash bridges away, wash entire buildings away. But Icelanders learned very rapidly not to build too much infrastructure, base their lives in the possible paths of these Jökulhlaup floods.
That's it from me.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.